And they actually give a warning at the beginning of this article that more or less tells you everything you need to know about the article and the organization. They say, readers, please be aware that this article has been shared on websites that routinely misrepresent content and spread misinformation. You know, probably the type of websites that the World Economic Forum would want to use the technology they're talking about in this article to prevent from speaking. Now, Forbes is talking about this article, but it's not spreading misinformation because it's in favor of what the article says. Because, see, in the World Economic Forum paradigm, you can talk about what we're doing if you spin it in a positive way, if you're in favor of it, if you're for it, then you're telling the truth and you'll be left up. But if you say all of the same stuff but talk about why it's a bad thing, then you're fake news, you're a danger to our entire society, and you must be censored. It's existential. You need to defend your civilization against the onslaught of this cancer of progressivism, liberalism, and globalist brainwashing. This is a life or death situation. No messing around. The prescription is 2 doses of InfoWars taken daily. All right, welcome back, ladies and gentlemen. This is the American Journal, Infowars.com. We do have a very big show for you today, and we have a lot to talk about. And I think I'm going to spend maybe the majority of the first 2 hours, but certainly most of this hour, talking about that topic that encompasses all the other topics, that is the Great Reset. And in a way, it's nice for them to actually give us the name of the thing that we've been talking about for decades. It comes in lots of different words: a new world order, global government, all of the depopulation agenda, all of these ideas have now been nicely packaged into this term, the Great Reset, publicized and made popular by the World Economic Forum and its leader, Klaus Schwab, its second in command, Mark Benioff, Time Magazine, the spiritual aspects of it, headed by its master priest, Yuval Noah Harari. And in a way, it's good because it gives us this label that we can reference and just go, this is what we're talking about right here. And people go, who is they? It's like, these guys, them. What are you talking about? Who is they? The people doing it. It's them. It's Klaus Schwab, Mark Benioff, and the Pope, to just name a few. But in another way, it makes categorizing these stories a little bit more difficult, because it encompasses so many different aspects of everything that we talk about, right? It has to do with depopulation. Depopulation has to do with AI and robotics replacing human beings. Replacing human beings and depopulation has to do with the health. And of course, all of this was accelerated and made public during COVID, and many of the COVID responses were made the way that they were because of the Great Reset. Then you also have climate change, and it's also predicated largely on climate change. So it makes it a little bit difficult to just talk about one of these things when they're all so intricately interconnected. You can talk about weather modification and eating bugs and social credit scores and the removal of cash and the creation of central digital currencies, central bank digital currencies. But the point of all of this, I think, is that that's what I hope we can do at InfoWars. I hope we can get through to people that you've got to take that zoomed out look. We can go into the details of all of these little individual moments, but you have to step back and zoom out and understand that it's very simple. It's not very complicated. There is a cabal of world elite that are using their power as they're in their positions at the top of national governments, academic pyramids, corporate structures, banking institutions, religious institutions, all of these things, the leaders of these coming together and planning out a world depopulation agenda that they're carrying out with the approval and acceptance and help of the people that they're killing, the people of the world. The people in charge are not trying to make money. They have all of the money. They invent the money. They call it digital printing, and it is, in fact, just pressing a button on a keyboard to summon into being billions and trillions of dollars. They don't need money for themselves. They have all the money they could possibly need. Money is power, and they want control, and power is how you get control. So we're going to start with a couple videos as more people start to understand this, and people that are actually paying attention and actually able to put the pieces together and connect the dots to form the image. They're realizing the situation that we're in, and even if they just find one little part about it, they realize, okay, this doesn't make sense outside of a larger conspiracy, right? It doesn't make sense to do things like chop down a forest and burn it for fuel if you don't have the carbon credit scam going on, which itself is, it's all very well interconnected and intertwined. But the point is that we need to try to get this out to normal people. And I've said it before, if you're watching Inforce, if you know the names Klaus Schwab and Great Reset, you are more informed than the vast majority of Americans. And that's not saying you're special, it's saying we've got a problem. It's saying we need more people being aware of what's going on and fighting back against it. So hopefully we can take some of this information, you can take some of this information that you may already know in one form or another and show it to your friends and let people know. Look, you don't have to be confused. You don't have to be scared. You don't have to wonder, is the earth being destroyed by climate change? Are we going to do it? Are we going to make it out of this? Am I going to, you know, what's the future going to look like? You don't have to wonder these things anymore. You know, why is everything so crazy? Why does it seem like nothing is going right? You don't have to wonder. You don't have to be confused. We know who it is. We know why they're doing it. It's just nobody's stopping them. And it may seem crazy, and it is. It is crazy. This world is crazy. And these people doing this is crazy. And finally, people are starting to realize this. Let's first go to clip number 12 here. This is Robert Kiyosaki from the Rich Dad radio show talking about Klaus Schwab and the World Economic Forum. Mainstream people are finally realizing this is what's happening behind the curtains, and they're helping to expose it now. Let's go now to Robert Kiyosaki.
I don't know much about Klaus Schwab and the WEF. The subject is hot enough that we could get deplatformed anyway for this one. But I'm doing this not because I want to get hit with a drone strike here, but I think we have to know. Who is this guy Klaus Schwab? I mean, what are they really up to?
Not everybody can be a robot polisher.
Is it stupid or is it evil? And a lot of people...
I go with evil.
It's both, right? So there's certainly people that know what they're doing and it's evil. And then I think there's a lot of people that have just come up in the system and they're just brainwashed by it.
The central bank of the United States was founded in 1913. Guess what else was founded in 1913? Tax Department.
The Federal Reserve and the IRS.
Yep.
And so when you look at all this, and then if you read Marx, he says that a progressive income tax is necessary for the spread of communism. So is the intent evil?
In the Communist Manifesto, number 5, he had 10 points. Number 5 was the creation of a central bank.
Right.
So central banks are part of Marxism.
Of course.
That's the whole goal.
Yeah.
And that's what I wrote in my manifesto. The central bank is communism, central controlled economy. Yeah, the American system, not Americans, but most people are completely uninformed.
Oh, totally uninformed. Totally uninformed.
Now, they've done a really good job of taking over the education system. So they've done a really good job playing this long game, and they started with changing the college-age kids' viewpoints on these things, who have now moved into media, who have now moved into government, who have now moved into finance. And if you look back at you know, the Revolutionary War in the United States, for example, there was it was the minority that forced that revolution to happen. So we don't need to reach the masses.
It was less than 5%.
Less than 5%. We just need that small irate minority.
And we're talking about what you can do to fight back, because I personally believe we're at a war right now. It's tragic what's happening. Yeah. So we fight for our freedoms more than anything else. Don't take my freedom away.
Not everybody can be a robot polisher.
And so central planning, so it's World Economic Forum, World Health Organization, World Trade Organization, World Meteorological Association, and then, the UN, the IMF, the BIS, and the BIS.
Central bank.
The central bank of central banks, exactly.
So that was from the Twitter user Robot Polisher. And I want to make note that the first thing that started with was this well-respected, well-established radio host saying we might be deplatformed for even discussing the world government. So this is the world government they're creating. It's unelected, it's unaccountable, and you won't even be able to talk about it. And that enforcement of that censorship will be done by AI. World Economic Forum rolled out the plan earlier this week. We'll read it on the other side. We'll get into what exactly the Great Reset looks like for us. Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen. this is, I guess, what we're here for. We showed in that last segment Robert Kiyosaki, who is the author of Rich Dad, Poor Dad, is a very popular, successful radio show. They're prefacing his discussion about the World Economic Forum and Klaus Schwab, which, again, it's not private. He's not exposing secrets. These people write articles about themselves. They go give speeches saying what they're doing. See, they're allowed to expound endlessly about their desires, their plans, machinations, the psychological operations that they're carrying out. They get to do it and publicize it and talk about it. But if you talk about it, well, now you're a danger. Now you're committing treason against the global government that you never asked to be a part of and never asked for permission to run the world. So I guess that's what we're here for, is to have already been burned, right? How do you kill a man who's already dead? How do you ban people that you've already banned? How do you destroy a company that you've already fired all of your ammunition at? So I guess we'll do it. I guess if people out there feel scared that they can't talk about this sort of stuff, that's what we're here for. And if people would have wanted to talk about it before, maybe we'd be a little bit stronger on this side of the aisle, the human side of the aisle, not the murderous, genocidal robot side of the aisle. But I suggest if you want to start talking about this stuff, you do it quickly, because they are rapidly installing systems and networks and surveillance apparatus that will prevent anybody from talking about this ever again. So this is what the new global government looks like. It is a corporatocracy, a plutocracy that meets in secret, that will publicize just what it wants you to know. And if you try to talk about it outside of being an active cheerleader for it, then you will be shut down by robots, of course. This article is from the World Economic Forum, a solution to online abuse, AI plus human intelligence. And they actually give a warning at the beginning of this article that more or less tells you everything you need to know about the article and the organization. They say, readers, please be aware that this article has been shared on websites that routinely misrepresent content and spread misinformation. You know, probably the type of websites that the World Economic Forum would want to use the technology they're talking about in this article to prevent from speaking. Kind of gives you a little peek behind the curtain, doesn't it? Here the World Economic Forum publishes an article, and if somebody they don't like republishes that article or publishes quotes from that article or talks about that article, well, that's misinformation. That's dangerous. That's the type of content that we need AI to censor. Sort of a self-fulfilling prophecy, if you really think about it. But of course, this is where they're going. They're already using AI to a very great degree to, surveil the internet, even your private chat logs and private emails. It's all being gone over with a fine-tooth comb by AI. And the only thing you really need to understand about this is that AI is programmed by a human being, and AI does what it's told. And if the AI comes up with an answer or some sort of outcome, solution that is contrary to the desires of the person who programmed the AI, they reprogram that AI. One great example is they did a hate speech AI, try to figure out where all the hate speech on the internet was coming from. And when they looked for things like sexism, they found that the vast majority of sexist comments came from women. Uh-oh, darn it, we thought the AI would come out saying men are bad and men are being sexist, but that's not what happened. So now we got to go in and tweak the AI because we didn't get the answer that we want. Or if they did it with racist comments and they looked for who is saying the racist comments, turns out the vast majority of them were coming from minority groups. Not kidding. They've done these studies. They've run these AI programs to find out where things are coming from. And they're very unfortunate decisions for the people who programmed the AI to come to a certain conclusion.
Or the original Twitter algorithm that just served things that people were interested in. Turns out that conservative content was pretty key.
Exactly.
And that caused them to radically change their AI and do shadow banning. So yeah, it's all human input.
Right. It's all human input, and they tweak the AI to reach conclusions they want, which is, of course, not just a violation of the purpose of AI, which is supposed to be an unemotional, purely logic-driven, put in input, get output, like a calculator, right? This is like going into your calculator and going, I just don't like the number 7, so I'm going to reprogram it to never say the number 7. Your math is always going to be wrong because you need the number 7. It doesn't work that way. You can't reprogram things that are supposed to run on a mathematical, mechanical process. Another great example was they tried to run an AI program to determine whether somebody should get parole by putting in a bunch of information about prisoners into this AI program and the program would spit out the likelihood that the program thought a certain prisoner would reoffend, and it found that, and I don't think that race was one of the inputs they put into the machine, but it turned out if you just put in all the person's name and where they're from and how many times they've been in prison and how long they've been in prison and what age they were at and what jobs they've held, you put that into the program and you spit it out, and then you sort it by race, you find out that the AI was more likely to say that black offenders were going to be reoffenders or potentially get in trouble again than white offenders. And they said, oh, well, the robot must be racist. The AI must be racist. Somehow, the racial biases of the programmer must have gotten into the machine somehow. It's a bug of some sort. No, it's just that you're not going to get the answers that you want because the answers that you want are predicated on a fantasy that has no relation to reality at all. So then when you plug in the AI to reality and it comes up, the AI doesn't care if someone's black or white. They just go, this person, X times 2, 4, 6, they're 30% likely to reoffend. It's like, whoa, I didn't realize you were a racist, computer. Computer's just like, input more numbers. Like, it doesn't know. But then they go, well, then clearly we're getting racist results from this computer. So now we have to go in and change the parameters of what it's doing to make it less racist. So then you're actually going in and altering that program, the code that you've written, to be more biased against white people or to be more in favor of black people because you want the answer. So again, this is the dangerous things, that you have AI programmed by people who have certain outcomes that they want, and yet it's unquestionable because, well, it's AI. Well, it's not a human being, so who are you going to complain to? It's just a program running. It's a program run by people with an ideology that they're pushing. This video went a little bit viral last week, and it explains the entire problem with AI. Let's go now to clip number 5.
Do you believe in God?
I don't believe in anything.
Well, there it is. Well, there it is. These are the new humanoid robots that they're making. This one's called Amica, and she doesn't believe in anything. She doesn't believe in God. She doesn't believe in human beings. She doesn't know right or wrong or anything that can't be, programmed into ones and zeros. And yet, these are the creatures that the World Economic Forum wants to have veto control over your thoughts and your words and your opinions. And this article continues to say, of course, the article is exactly what you think. They want AI to censor everybody all the time. They're like, you should really read the piece for yourself. This article's been posted on fake news sites, so you should really read the article yourself. You read the article and it's just like, we will control everyone through AI. We will censor them before they even think the thoughts. And you're like, okay, this is exactly what I thought it was. And they say, while AI provides speed and scale and human moderators provide precision, their combined efforts are still not enough to proactively detect harm before it reaches platforms. See, it's a problem. You have the efficiency of the AI and the bias of the human beings, and those are good things, but we still don't have the ability we still don't have precognition. We still can't detect pre-crime. We still can't silence people before they ever speak, and that's a big issue. But they're coming up with solutions, and they're all as horrific as you would expect. Stay tuned as we continue to talk about this new AI world, the Great Reset. Folks, welcome back. We're talking about the Great Reset. Again, we're almost at the end of this hour. We've hardly even scratched the surface of the Great Reset, so we'll try to move a little quicker here. But every aspect to this you have to be able to understand, and central to their implementation of this program is the prerequisite censorship and control of thought and control of information. That's why it's an info war. They couldn't do this stuff if people knew about it. They wouldn't be able to enact their plans if people knew the real reasons behind them. Their main tactic, their main weapon in this information war is fear. And if people knew they didn't have to be scared of these fabricated boogeymen, then they wouldn't give up their rights, their very lives, their bloodlines, their children, their heritage. They wouldn't give it all up willingly if they didn't think it was an existential prerogative that they do so. And so they have to create the fear. To create the fear, they have to lie. To lie, they have to censor people who are telling the truth. To censor people who are telling the truth, they have to program AI to go out and find this information and destroy it from the internet. It's a very complicated and well-established system that they're running here. And the World Economic Forum, again, they say this might be misinformation. I mean, this article has been posted on websites that spread misinformation, so we don't know. But this is from the World Economic Forum themselves. And they say, this article represents the opinions of the author, not the World Economic Forum. We just published it and also totally, absolutely agree with everything that they're saying and everything in this article we talk about in our group meetings that are held behind closed doors and then implemented through national policy by our representatives at the top level of national governments and corporations the world over. But don't read too much into it. Don't think about it too much. And if you do, you're fake news and you will be censored by the AI that we're telling you is fake news and you shouldn't talk about. It's all very confusing, but not really. An intelligence-fueled approach to content moderation, they say. Intelligence collected from millions of sources is entered into training sets, which is then fed to the AI, which gives feedback to subject matter experts. The subject matter experts, like the doctors who perform surgeries on transgender children, the people who tell you that men can get pregnant, people that put you in a mask and shut down your entire economy and started the process of suffering that we're just now starting to really feel come to fruition. The experts. And that gets fed back into the AI, which then will change its findings a little bit and sent back to the subject matter experts. So you have this feedback loop of the AI and subject matter experts really narrowing in on things they don't want you to talk about and how to prevent you from first prevent you from posting it online, then prevent you from sharing it, then ideally they would prevent you from ever posting it in the first place. Then they want to prevent you from writing it out in private. Really, the ultimate goal and the shortcut here is to prevent you from ever even having the capability to think it in the first place. And of course, this is endorsed by Forbes, the growing role of AI in content moderation. And I would have to guess that this is not one of the outlets that the World Economic Forum is calling fake news. See, they say that there are websites that spread misinformation that are talking about this article. Now, Forbes is talking about this article, but it's not spreading misinformation because it's in favor of what the article says. Because, see, in the World Economic Forum paradigm, you can talk about what we're doing if you spin it in a positive way, if you're in favor of it. If you're for it, then you're telling the truth and you'll be left up. But if you say all of the same stuff but talk about why it's a bad thing, then you're fake news, you're a danger to our entire society, and you must be censored. It's existential. That's the way that works, and everybody knows this. If you say something that the World Economic Forum is doing and you like it, then you're intelligent, well-informed, you're just a member of the world society. But if you're not for it, then it's a crazy conspiracy theory and nobody should listen to you. And of course, these content moderation rules are nothing new. They are expanding, getting more utilized, and specifically being used to change things politically. Twitter Safety on August 11th said, starting today, we'll be enforcing the civic integrity policy in context of the 2022 midterms, meaning they'll take action against misleading claims about the voting process, misleading content intended to intimidate or dissuade people from participating in the election, or misleading claims that may undermine public confidence in election outcomes. So again, this content moderation, this control of thought itself from the top and from the people that decided that they are right about everything, they get the final say into what is true and what is false and what should be and what shouldn't be. They'll use big tech to, bring about these changes and facilitate their rise through the political process by enacting that control on the general population of a voting public. Now, a lot of this stuff is predicated on crisis. It's predicated on disaster. It requires the fear created by the disaster to circumvent and override and go around the logical aspects of your logical parts of your brain. This is one of the things that has been understood for a very long time. When you're in that fight or flight mode, when your decisions are being boiled down to the survival level, logic does not enter into your thought process, whether you want it to or not. It is a physiological reality that you can circumvent logic by using fear. World Economic Forum knows this. They have hordes of psychologists that are working on not just figuring out exactly how this works, but how to implement this strategy to achieve their aims. Get you emotional, get you fearful, utilize that fear, circumvent your logic center of your brain, and do things that make no sense at all because you're scared that if you don't do it, you're going to die. And so they use climate change, COVID, and a host of other topics and events to bring their own agenda forward. And there's a content creator named What's Her Face that covered this very clearly, succinctly. I want to go to her video now. It's clip number 17. Again, her name is What's Her Face. This video called Conspiracy Theory and Misinformation. Let's watch.
Now, Mr. Schwab likes to throw around a lot of buzzwords to convince the masses that this agenda is for the betterment of humanity. Words like sustainability and inclusivity and equality for all. But in his 2016 book, The Fourth Industrial Revolution, he's a lot more candid about the elitist plan for world domination. Let's skim through some excerpts from this literary masterpiece, shall we? The tools of the Fourth Industrial Revolution enable new forms of surveillance and other means of control that run counter to healthy open societies. Oh, well, that sounds helpful. Public crime is likely to decrease due to the convergence of sensors, cameras, AI, and facial recognition software. These technologies can intrude into the hitherto private space of our minds, reading our thoughts and influencing our behavior. Sounds a lot like mind control, but that's a conspiracy, so it can't be. As capabilities in this area improve, the temptation for law enforcement agencies and courts to use techniques to determine the likelihood of criminal activity, assess guilt, or even possibly retrieve memories directly from people's brains will increase. Even crossing a national border might one day involve a detailed brain scan to assess an individual's security risk. And last but definitely not least, the future will challenge our understanding of what it means to be human from both a biological and a social standpoint. Better call up Sarah Connor. But the invisible boogeyman narrative won't hold up forever, and the WEF is well aware of that. That's why they have a backup crisis to carry the agenda home. What crisis would that be? That's right, you guessed it, our good old friend, global warming. For those of you who don't know, global warming is a manufactured crisis created by the Club of Rome, a crisis think tank created in 1968 in order to convince the masses to agree to their own demise. So be prepared to hear about all the sacrifices you're gonna have to make in order to save the planet. Sacrifices like giving up your property rights, being forced into smart cities, and being injected with nanotechnology so they can track you down for thought crimes. Now, why anyone in their right mind would think it's a good idea to give the very elitists who destroyed the planet more power to now save the planet is beyond me.
But we don't have a choice. It's beyond me as well, but we're not being asked whether we think it's a good idea. It's being imposed on us. And we're going to get into the next hour the way that climate change is being used, the just absurd contradictions of climate change policy, the just absolute nonsense when it comes to the claims of climate change. We'll talk a little bit more about the censorship that they use, as well as what the ultimate purpose of this is, which is nothing less than global depopulation. And we'll explain exactly how that will come about and why they want it. They talk about all this. We don't have to come up with anything. It's not conspiracy theorizing anymore. It's just conspiracy illuminating. It's conspiracy elucidating. Conspiracy describing. That's all we're doing here, and we'll continue to do it as we move into the second hour of American Journal. Please go to InfoWarsStore.com. It may not have been called the Great Reset, but this is the exact program that Alex Jones has been describing, that he saw very early on. He saw those individual data points. He was able to draw the constellation in his mind and see the greater picture. It has been warning us ever since. That's why we're slated for destruction. Don't let it work. Go to InfoWarsStore.com. We'll fight back.
The globalists are doing everything they can to destroy heterosexual relationships, to annihilate the family, to split up marriages. And if you look at the studies, the number one cause of marriages breaking up is the fact that the men cannot satisfy their women in the bedroom. It's that simple, ladies and gentlemen. And even if you're like me and hardly ever have a problem, I mean, all of us at one point or another do. That's just the truth. The liberals will make fun of that, but everybody knows that's true. But whether you rarely have any issues or have them on a regular basis, Instaheart is the number one best-selling natural herbal supplement in the world when it comes to male enhancement, because it really works. It also gives you a ton of energy. And you can find it at theironpatriot.com. That just takes you to their website, but then we get some of the credit as a sponsor. So go to theironpatriot.com today, watch their informational videos, read the literature, and then get your Instaheart in the mail today when seconds matter. Instaheart.